Hi everyone, my name is Tegan Kirk. I don't have any special nicknames, so it's just Tegan. So to jump right in, culture, I Googled the definition and I absolutely hated the definition. It's arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement, but I don't believe that that really encompasses any of what culture actually is. I think there's so much more. Culture is essentially a way of life. So to me, it embodies the way groups of people do things. So their behaviors, outlooks, attitudes, goals, customs, etc. It can also mean shared ethnicity, gender, religion, social status. And it also can be used to describe groups of people, so who are into the same kinds of things. So music, movies, literature, so fandoms, if you will. They have a lot of the same outlooks, attitudes, behaviors, like I said, but they can be completely different ethnicities, genders, religions, maybe not even speak the same languages, but they're all part of that same culture. So I feel like culture can really mean a whole array of things. My culture, I really don't know how to answer that question because I've never had to answer it before. I've never thought about it, so it's really good that it's being asked. Obviously, I'm a white female, straight, middle of the road, economic and social status. I'm a mother, a wife. I have a lot of friends and family. I'm mostly German, eighth Native American, and I'm sure some other European bits and bobs in there. I was born and raised in Washington, in Seattle, never been off of this continent. I lead a pretty straightforward life, working class, no special things for me usually. I've always been just your basic white girl, so to speak. I'm not religious, so I don't have any of that kind of culture to relate to. Um, but I think someone outside of my culture would definitely see me as, like I said, just a basic American girl. There's not a whole lot about me that is outside of the box or atypical when you look at me, so I'm just pretty average. I started to learn about culture in the fifth grade, actually, when we started learning about different ethnicities and where we each came from. I always knew that I was German. My name is German. My grandma spoke German to me when I was younger, and we always did the pickle on the Christmas tree. But I found out from my dad that his grandmother, so my great grandmother, she was full blooded Choctaw Indian. And that amazed me. I started reading everything I could about them and their culture. I would immerse myself in anything I could get my hands on related to anything Native American, not just Choctaw Indian. And I made my parents cook all kinds of traditional Native American foods. I would bring it to school, brag about it, all that great stuff. Um, and I just loved it. So from that point on, I started to really understand the differences between our American culture and Native American culture. And it really gave me an appreciation for other cultures as well. So it wasn't just I have an appreciation for Native American culture. It was very much, wow, there's so many other cultures out here that I have no idea about. So it really made me appreciate that. I've had a few instances over the years where I have been forced to step out of my comfort zone and interact with different cultures on a completely different basis than I had ever had before. I have worked in many customer service jobs, and I've had to deal with all sorts of people of different ethnicities and backgrounds. But the most difficult was when I got a job working for an agency that hires and sends interpreters out to people who need interpreters for doctor's appointments, courts, lawyers' appointments, child support appointments, all that kind of stuff. And so we would send somebody. And we had so many languages covered that there were some that I had never even heard of when I started working there. And that amazed me because here in Spokane, there's not growing up on the west side of the state, there's so many cultures there. And I was so used to seeing in Seattle just everybody of every ethnicity. And moving here, it wasn't as much. And so starting to work for that agency, I definitely was like, wow, there's a lot of people here that don't speak English, that have different cultures. And so that was really eye-opening for me. So it really gave me a good look into other cultures as well. And how to communicate with them, because I had never had to communicate with so many different people of different languages before. And there would be times where I would have an unhappy client call because they didn't like their interpreter, or they wanted to complain about them or whatever. And it was hard to understand them. Obviously, they spoke very little English, and they were mad on top of that. And if any of you have grandparents or parents that speak different languages, when they get mad, it's a little intimidating. So I was yelled at a lot in different languages, and in Farsi, it's really intimidating. But I did learn real quick how to communicate with people when they're mad or they're under duress. So communication to me really ties into that, because it's essential for exchanging words, ideas, thoughts, information between two or more people. So it is obviously way more than that. So with so many people in the world, there's obviously more than one way to communicate. Not everyone has the same way of communicating, and there's so many different ways to communicate. It depends on the person, the people that you're talking to. So for example, I am quite good at figuring out how people communicate within a few minutes of talking to them, and I think working at that job really helped me do that. And there are many people who are the same, but there are also lots of people who cannot do that and therefore struggle to communicate as efficiently and effectively as those who have a better understanding of what it means to communicate and how to do it. So it's not an easy thing, and I still struggle with it in my personal life, learning how to communicate, but I've gotten really good at it the last several years while working in healthcare. So like I said earlier, culture and communication really go hand in hand. You really can't have one without the other for the most part. And a lot of how we communicate depends on our culture. But our culture can also dictate how we communicate and even change our culture. So communication between different cultures can be really tricky. And some cultures just don't communicate with other cultures at all, and that lack of communication can cause huge rifts between countries, religions, and even just small groups of people. So in order to communicate effectively with other cultures, you really need to take into consideration how they speak, communicate, and essentially perceive the world around them. This hugely applies to the real world in so many different aspects. We live in the most diverse country in the entire world, and there are so many people here from so many walks of life, and not just different ethnicities, but people of different social classes, sexualities, etc., etc. You have to learn to effectively communicate with just about everyone, because unless you are only communicating with a small group of people in your culture, chances are you're communicating with people who have completely different cultures than you. And I'm currently studying to become a nurse, and in the medical field in particular, it is so important to be able to communicate with people of all cultures and their families, especially when it comes to sensitive medical issues. So that really ties into learning how to read somebody and how they communicate, so you're able to give them the information that they need and they're not getting upset about it. So last question, the 3 most important things that I learned from the syllabus are, I find it very important that we will be learning to communicate with non-native speakers, or reading about it, talking about it, as well as people with different worldviews, values, communication styles. One thing I struggle with is trying to communicate or have a conversation with someone with a different view than I have, and when they're very argumentative, and the conversation is them trying to change my opinion. That is a big pet peeve of mine. I love having heated debates and conversations about politics and world issues and whatever, but if you have a different opinion than me, you're not going to change my opinion. Of course, you're going to educate me as best as you can, hopefully, but the learning to communicate with somebody in that aspect is really difficult. So I'd love to delve deeper into strategies on how to approach something like that. Second thing, cultural sensitivity is something I found to be extremely important in mentioning. Being able to voice your opinion without disrespect and be supportive and understanding of each other is something I think we can take and use outside of this class as well. And finally, the points made in the section about academic freedom, offense, and expression. I think it is really important that people understand they do not have the right to be protected from words, ideas, values, beliefs, especially if they're different than your own beliefs or opinion. Like it said in the syllabus, you're allowed to be offended, but you should not take that offense and make someone feel bad or insulted for having their opinions. It's just not right. So I really look forward to having great discussions with everybody here in this class, and thank you so much.